So gave her a bit of a scan and realised, you didn't give birth yet. So I had to give an emergency operation. And once it operated on the poor woman, they found out the reason why she hadn't given birth. She had twins. And those twins were now well grown. Imagine like British people, bowler hats, a nice tie, suit, and a cap. Okay. And then one was called Claude, the other one was called Percy. And one said to the other, "After you, Claude." "No, I insist, after you, Percy." "No, after you, Claude." "After you, Percy." Okay, anyway, the video's back on now. There are advantages no matter what happens, and we have to have that pause. So now we can give the talk. Great. This is one of the reasons, whatever happens in life, the talk which I gave in Melbourne was supposed to be titled, "Why Me?" And of course, whenever we give a talk like that, "Why me?" we think of all the rotten things we have to deal with in life. And why do we always give talks about rotten things in life? Like, why do you get old? Why aren't you rich? Why aren't you healthy? Why aren't all your friends just looking after you and appreciating what a wonderful person you are? Why do I have to give the talk? But that is also looking at life for the negative part of it. Why do we have to have a pause after the meditation before we actually give the talk? Why do I have to invent some jokes to tell at that time? So instead of just sitting here and just getting bored or getting frustrated, and when the internet's going to come back on again to be able to record the talk, instead of doing that, you make good use of it. You have an example. You have an opportunity to actually to tell a joke or two, and that's what I always feel. The great things in life is always the opportunities which life gives you. So instead of feeling sorry for yourself, "Why me? I'm old, I'm fat, I'm exploited. Why do I have to go to Melbourne to give talks? There's already many people in Melbourne there. Why do you want to take a photograph of me? There's many other photographs of me and drawings which are very embarrassing. They look like fat, but I'm happy. Why do you want to do these things? Can't you let me?" I was told when I went to Borobudur over in Indonesia, that big monument in the middle of Java, that over there they've banned photographs over there of Borobudur. And I asked why. And they said because on that particular type of stone, the flashlight of the cameras actually makes the stone decay. And I said, that's what happens to me when people take photographs of me. You see, I used to be very fit and healthy. Now look at me. It's all the photographs, that's what happened, and all the videos. But anyway, so instead of saying, "Why me?" you say, "What a wonderful service this is." You give meaning to whatever you have to do in life. And when you get meaning to even simple things, even problems, you have problems in life. Does the committee have problems, Mr. President? Does your family have problems? Does the economy have problems? Does life have problems? Of course it does. But one of the stories we were just discussing in brief, I want to do the whole story this evening because I haven't said this for a while, which was the Buddhist nun. This very simple Buddhist nun living alone in a cave in a very remote area. She was a very wonderful nun, good meditation, very kind, having a wonderful time, and many people liked to listen to her teachings. But then, being a simple nun, she didn't have much in her cave, so she would always go on alms round in the morning. When she went on alms round this one morning, when she came back from alms round, she saw that one of her spare robes had been bitten into by a mouse. Do you have mice problems where you are? I know I meant to mention this to Ajahn Brahm, but the last time I did a retreat at Jhana Grove, there was a mouse would come into my hut every day. Actually, it was, I don't mind mentioning, Nicholas was very kind, we put a little mousetrap in there, a Buddhist mousetrap. I'd say why it's Buddhist mousetrap, because it will never kill the mouse. He put some beautiful food inside, and the mouse would come in here and eat it, and after eating it, Nicholas would take it away somewhere, give it some more food as he'd set it free. And that mouse would go into that trap twice a day. He said it was different mice. I think no. That's for 9 days. I think 11 times that mouse went into the trap. 11 times, that's a lot. And it's obvious to me why. Because it's a nice thing for the mouse. You get nice food in there, so he just walks in voluntarily into the trap, eats the food, and just has a bit of a rest, and waits for Nicholas to take it somewhere, has a bit of exercise, always goes to a different place in Jhana Grove every time, and then goes back again and has a top-up. It's just safe, because that mouse learned that it's a safe place to eat, because one get killed in there, and free food, a little rest, and a nice little journey, and a bit of a travel. So that was a very happy mouse. So I think Ajahn Brahm will find that mouse tonight or tomorrow in the teacher's cottage at Jhana Grove. But anyway, this nun, this mouse would actually eat her robe. Must have been a very hungry mouse. Or maybe it was just very, very devoted, to nuns, just like the taste and the smell of holy Buddhist nuns. And it was holy because that's what he left in the robe afterwards. Anyway, that Buddhist nun, she got so many of her robes bitten into. And what do? You can't just leave them to decay. We can't just go to the shop and get a new robe or order one on Amazon, not in a cave. They won't deliver there. So instead she would actually spend a lot of time sewing up patches into her robes. And one day she came back and said, "Oh no, not again. Another hole in my robe which I left in the cave." And so she thought, there must be some other way to deal with this problem. And this is, be careful on our committees, because we always think this is a problem, we should try and sort it out another way. And so she thought, I know, let's get a cat. Because if you've got a cat, the cat doesn't even need to kill the mice, just the smell of the cat there would actually keep the mice away. So she asked somebody on the alms round, has anyone got a spare cat for, my cave? Because I'm spending so much time just doing patches on my robes, and look at my robes, I look like some sort of really incredibly poor person. And so somebody gave her a cat. So she had a cat in the cave. So the mice disappeared. But then also she realized the mice just can't stay there without being fed. So she had to get some food for the cat. And they don't have any shops where you can get cat food or kitty cat food, or I don't know. What do they call cat food these days? I shouldn't do this product placement, that's bad for the Buddhist Society. But anyway, so at least she got some milk. So she got some milk from the farmers. They asked, could I give a bit of milk? And so the milk was for the cat. And so there she would always get some milk every day. But she thought, that's really troublesome for me and for the villagers, because sometimes there's no milk. So then she thought, well, what I really would need then is like my own cow. If I had a cow, then I wouldn't have to keep asking people for milk. It's a good solution to the problem. So they did a big fundraising, because a cow costs a lot of money, a big fundraising, and they got a cow for the nun to get milk to feed the cat to keep the mouse away, so she didn't need to keep on mending her robes. So she had a cow, but now you got a cow, you've got to look after the cow. You can't just put it up there and expect the cow to meditate all day. So on the alms round, every couple of days you get this big bunch of hay or grass or whatever. The villagers will be very happy, they're very supportive of this holy nun. They got all this grass for her and gave it to her, and she had to carry it all the way back to feed the cow, to provide the milk, to feed the cat, to keep the mouse away, so she didn't need to keep bothering with her robes. But then that's a lot of grass to carry every day, and even the villagers thought that was a bit of a burden for that poor nun. So they did another big fundraising. You know how often we do big fundraisings here in the BSWA or in the BSV. Another big fundraising, and they got a little field. A field where the grass would grow naturally, so that there they could put the the cow in the field, and the nun would go there every day to milk the cow and to get the milk for the cat to keep the mice away. And then she thought, that's not really the right sort of livelihood for a nun, to keep going to the field, to actually to milk the cow every day. I've never seen a nun do things like that in Thailand, or actually they don't do that in Dhammaloka. I think they would rebel if I asked them to milk cows. But anyway, and rightly so. So she thought, what I really need is like a temple boy, an attendant, because then the attendant can do the job of actually milking the cow. But then she also thought, well, that's a bit of a hard work, but there's many boys especially in the village who are a bit naughty. So I'll ask for the naughtiest boy, and living with me, the family will be very happy that I'll be teaching it some discipline. So she asked for a naughty boy, and they got the naughty boy. The family were very happy to send it to the temple for a week. I often thought of that, as many people probably want, their children. Can you please take them away for a week? Sometimes they do temporary ordinations in some part of the world. We refuse to do that in a Serpentine monastery for good reason, because many of the parents would love their children, especially the boys, to be ordained temporarily during the holiday period, so that when you have holidays you don't have to keep looking after your kids. You can go all over the world now because the COVID restrictions are gone, and you can dump you can I did say dump, didn't I? You can leave that's what I really meant. You can leave your kids at monastery because they get a good sort of education, while you're free to enjoy yourselves. So anyway, so you got a nice boy there, but then this boy was there to milk the cow, to get the milk for the cat to keep the mice away. But then you can't just have a boy sitting in a cave next to a nun all day. That's not really good. You have are very careful these days, our Buddhist society, with making sure there's no possibility of any abuse at all. And you have to make sure that, that it's not that you don't abuse anybody, but it doesn't look like you abuse anybody. So having a nun and a boy staying in the same cave, that might be a bit suspicious. So because of that, they thought, well, actually we do need a little hut for the boy, maybe in the front of the cave, but separate from the nun. So she went there for another big fundraising to get... That's one of the reasons I went to Melbourne, to raise funds for the retreat centre project over there, which is going well, but still needs a bit more. But anyway, to get some wood to build a small hut for the boy who could live there, to look after the field and the cow, to milk it every day, to get some milk for... Please excuse me, I think this is a funny story, but it's very brilliant. To get some milk for the cat, so the cat could keep the mice away, so she didn't have to spend so much time mending her robes. And then, of course, I better finish this quick, because otherwise you're getting bored of it. And then it was time for her to go and give a Dhamma talk, but she said, I'm too busy to give a Dhamma talk. I've got to look after the boy and look after the hut, so that he can just milk the cow to get some milk for the for the cat, so that the mice don't bite holes in my robes, so I don't have to work so hard. And she couldn't go and give that talk, she realised the problem. So what she did was actually to give away the cow, send the boy home, sell the field, and give the cat away as well. And then, with no possessions left, no cow, no field, no boy, no little hut for the boy, no even a cat, then she went on arms round as she always did before that, and she got some rice, not much but enough, and when she came back into her cave, there was a hole in her robe. The mice had come back, but she smiled because it was far less work just putting a patch on her robe and organising all the other things. Now can you understand about the economy? Why is it we don't do so much thinking, I'm going to get into trouble here, but I don't mind getting into trouble. I'm old enough now that you're not going to sack me now. That if we build a nice big kitchen in Bodhinyana Monastery, I'll get another thing of this, and then it'll be much easier for us. Just like that nun thought, I don't want to keep mending my robes, so I'll get all these other things, and then life will be easier. Is that the case? Or is it because we always see the problem, the hole in the robe, rather than seeing the positive side of the peace, when you live so simply that you don't mind just sewing a patch of cloth on your robe, which is the most important. So that's one of the reasons why, be careful when you say, why me, or you get sort of, this is not right, and we have all these solutions. In the end, we're missing the point. There are mice around, and I don't know if the mice you've seen, the mice I've seen, they're beautiful, they're gorgeous, the mice. Every time one gets into the trap, you just want to let it out without any monk seeing you, because you get into trouble for that. I don't know, they were so cute. I remember the first mice when we built the first dining room over in Jhana Grove. Not in Jhana Grove, over in Bodhinyana Monastery. The mouse, they could fit through such small holes. And in the morning when we had our meal of the day, they'd always come down, they could smell the food, and they'd run over our laps. There were only about 3 or 4 monks at that time. They'd run over, we'd play with them, give them a bit of food. They had a lovely life, the mice, being fed by the monks. We weren't supposed to do that, but we didn't really know it was unhealthy. We just did it anyway. Until the mice became so playful. I enjoyed that time. And they're so playful that they said, no, we've got to do something about this. And so those spittoons we have in monastery, those that go to monastery see it, the head monk was Ajahn Brahm, I don't mind telling this. He put the spittoon over the mouse to catch it and take it away. Aww. Taking away the fun of our lunch. It was like a mice cafe. Have you ever had one of those? I mean, they have many themed cafes. We didn't eat the mice. We played with them while we were having our lunch. They're very cute. And I must admit, when I went down to Newbury, I didn't believe this at first, but they said there's a fox comes to the monks' quarters every evening. I must admit, when I first saw that fox, it was a beautiful fox. It was just so... Is the police coming for me? No. It's such a beautiful fox, and I just saw it. It's so easy to have some empathy for a fox like that. Yeah, I know the fox catches all sorts of native animals and small animals, but this was a young fox. I was very happy to see one of the monks who was just feeding it every evening. And and they said, when I mentioned this in the talk, they said, oh no, we make sure we always feed it a long way away from the house. It wasn't a long way away from the house, it was right outside the door. And that fox would come every evening. And when you make the fox nice and fat, we thought it would actually kill less animals. Was that true? I don't know, that's a good theory, but it was just so irresistible, this little fox, and very tame. So the monk was actually feeding it by hand. And I saw that, and it just really warmed my heart. Beautiful animal. But you say it's a pest, but it's already here. So instead of seeing the worst part of it, or the bad part of things, you just see the good part of things. We judge so harshly, and many of the judgments we make just are really unfair. And that's why the other story which I told while I was over in Melbourne, and this was again one of our monks here, was kept on asking me, this year, Ajahn Brahm, is it going to be a cold winter over here in Perth, especially down in Serpentine? Because you may know, those of you who have visited Serpentine, we do have electricity, but most of our heating, especially the heating in the dining room, that actually comes from a wood fire. There's lots of wood in the forest, and we have to burn it anyway, or there's a bushfire. We're not really adding to the smoke, we're just making sure it's burned more efficiently in a stove which doesn't create so much smoke, and also that we use that to keep people warm and healthy. So we always have to make sure we collect enough wood during this time of the year as we prepare for the winter time. And that reminded me of this story. It's in one of those books, like Good, Bad, Who Knows, about this monastery in the Himalaya mountains. And in the Himalaya mountains there, the old abbot was always, he was not just wise and had good meditation, he was also very, very street smart, you might say. You know, he knew so many things about how to keep that monastery happy and healthy. So the monks would always ask him every winter time, should we collect more wood, or is it going to be a cold winter or a moderate winter? And he was always really accurate. So, but when that monk died, and a new monk was elected, it came to the autumn time, the time when it was to collect the wood, so they asked him again. They asked the replacement abbot, is it going to be a cold winter? Should we collect some more wood? And this replacement abbot said, leave it with me. And so that night he meditated, but his meditation wasn't as good as the old abbot. So when he didn't get any information from his deep meditation, he got out his mobile phone and rang the meteorological office. It was late at night, but he got through to somebody. It was actually one of the experts, the professor. And he was anonymous. He didn't say it was a monk asking. He said, up in the foothills of the Himalayas, is it going to be a cold winter this year? Or moderate? And the professor said, well, you can't really tell, but I imagine it'll probably be a cold winter. You know what the Weather Bureau does over here? They say, well, maybe. So he said, a moderate winter. So the following morning he told his monks in his monastery, it's a moderate winter this year, but we still need to collect some wood, so just collect a bit of extra just in case, because you never know. So all the monks spent the next 7 days just collecting wood, lots of it. And after 7 days they asked the abbot, have we got enough? He said, leave it with me. And that night he meditated, and at the end of the meditation got nowhere. So he got out his mobile phone again and he rang the meteorological office, got through to the same expert. Is it going to be a cold winter or moderate winter? And the expert said, the signs have changed. It's got much worse. I think it's going to be a cold winter this year. Okay, so he asked all the monks. The following morning, my meditation is going to be much colder. So another 7 days, collect as much wood as you can. So they really went for it, collecting lots and lots of wood. And then they asked the monks asked the abbot again, is it going to be a cold winter? So he did his meditation, got nowhere again, rang the mobile phone, and sort of got through to the expert. And the expert said, wow, the signs have got much, much worse. I think it's going to be one of the coldest winters ever up in the mountains. And he said, oh, thank you so much. But before he hung up, he said, actually, how do you know? Are you sure? And that's when the meteorological professor said, the reason I know is because the monks in the monastery are collecting wood like no one's business. Now, welcome to life. That's what happens. We always follow what other people say. Or welcome, that's how Wall Street works. So little by little, this is why do we always see what's wrong, and instead of seeing what's funny and what's positive. No one really knows. So when you say why me, why it happened to me, can you ever really find out? Instead of an opportunity to collect some more wood, so maybe next year you don't have to collect any, and who knows whether it's going to be hot or cold. So, but nevertheless, that positive attitude means you're always free of trouble in this world. And sometimes people say, why do I have to collect so much wood when I don't need to? this is one of the other things. We always want to do things for a reason, for a purpose. And we always want to find out their purpose. Why do I need to do this? Has your kid ever asked you that? Why? Why do I need to go to school, Mummy? Why do I need to eat my greens? Why do I need to do this and do that? And of course, the answer is that why to go to school is because otherwise Mummy and Daddy will have to be off work and look after you all day. No, that's not right, is it? You may have thought that. No, of course, there are many things you think, why? It has no purpose at the time, but later on in life you give it purpose. I often say to people that time of, the food which I used to eat when I was first in Thailand, they really showed me, I never realized biology, why I needed to learn biology, but it was very helpful. When, for one meal of the day, remember only one meal of the day, all we had that day was a ball of sticky rice with a frog on top. A boiled frog. Not fried, not sautéed, with no garlic or even salt on it, just a boiled frog. Can you imagine that? And that's all you had, nothing else, because that's all the villagers had, subsistence farming. So of course, you had to start eating it with the rice. It's not very nice to eat. I was a vegetarian before I was a monk. I had to do these sorts of things. But anyway, you started eating. I was very relieved I did go to school and had a good education. The monk sitting next to me hadn't had a good education. So once you get the meat off the legs, that's when you start picking at the insides of the frog. Of course, I knew what part of the frog was which. The monk sitting next to me didn't know. And he pressed the frog's bladder. Yes, that's right. The bladder still had urine in it. And it peed all over his rice. That was already a bad lunch. And that was the end of his lunch. He went hungry that day. But that's the sort of thing. Sometimes if you ask your kid, a kid asks you, why do I have to go to school, Mummy? Tell him that story. You never know when what you learn at school comes to help you. So that is one of the reasons why do we do these things? You can always get something out of what you do. All the friends and all the training and all the ability to how to learn. And when you go to school, you have to get exams at the very end. Do you know how to learn and remember things? Sometimes that's a great gift to be able to have enough attention to be able to learn and remember things. I know that some of you sometimes don't have that much attention. That's why I always try and make jokes about things. And I always actually look at you to find out what you're up to. So sometimes you're looking at me and paying attention because you're embarrassed that you're falling asleep or whatever. But that's of making things interesting as a teacher. Because I know many, many times I was listening to talks and I was a monk. I was supposed to pay attention, but after a while you start nodding off. And it's very difficult for me to nod off here, because if I nod off here, my nose hits the microphone. It makes a noise. But to keep it interesting, to make it fun, that's where you see the positive side of things and the beautiful side of things. Have you ever noticed, if I talk about negativity, people being corrupt, being greedy, and being selfish, being hurtful, that doesn't actually wake you up. That's just what you hear most of the day. But instead, when you hear about people being kind to one another, when people do big acts of kindness, big acts of generosity, big acts of service, and people don't even know who actually did that service, then that is wonderful. Okay, this is one of the old stories, but again, I remind myself, I haven't said this for again a long time, and that was the story of the thief. The thief who came into the temple one evening, really, middle of the night, and the head monk, just like, where we just live around the back of the reception area, and the head monk was woken up. He heard somebody making a noise in the main area of the temple, and he thought, it's one of the monks has got up early. But then he realized none of his monks get up that early, so he decided to investigate. And when he investigated, he saw there was a thief, a burglar, this big guy with tattoos, and I don't know what else he had on him, but he did have a knife. He was trying to break into the donation box. And so the monk, the head monk, was always really kind, said, "What are you doing?" "Shut up!" said the thief. He said, "If you move, I will knife you." And so the head monk didn't move, but then he said, "If you're trying to break into the donation box, here's the key." "Is this some sort of trick?" said the burglar. Again, I usually ask at this point in the story, is that a good burglar voice? You're very kind. It's not a good burglar voice. I'm not sure what a burglar voice is, but I'll try my best just to entertain you and entertain myself as well. "Here's the key. Is this some kind of trick?" He says, "No, the donation box is for good causes. Whenever you put any money into the box or do it online, why are you doing that for? It's just to help people. The service of a Buddhist temple is actually to help and serve people. Of course, we also have to pay our bills, but that's also, we pay our bills so you can come in here and have electricity in the evening and have a cup of tea and stuff. You have a nice place where you can rest and park. So all of these things is like service. And you're obviously very hungry and very poor that you want to risk your freedom by robbing the temple. So no, please, open the box for yourself." And so the thief, he had his knife pointed at the monk, and he opened the box. That's why you have two eyes. You can do two things at the same time. One to make sure the monk wasn't messing around, the other thing to open the box. And of course, the box had plenty of money in it. So the thief stuffed the money into his pockets and his trousers and wherever he could. And then the monk said, "When was the last time you had anything to eat?" "None of your business," said the thief. He said, "Look, in the cupboard above, you'll find some food which was left over from the meal today. Take as much as you like." "Is this a trick?" "No, this is Buddhist monks. Please take some." And so the thief stuffed his pockets after the money with food, sandwiches and stuff. And then he said, "And don't call the police, otherwise I'll really knife you." He said, "Why should I call the police? I've given you this money and I've given you the food. Just go and have a good meal and a happy life." And even the monk gave us kind of quick blessing. And then the thief went away. And after the thief went away, the head monk explained to his committee and just what had happened and why it had happened. And the committee were okay with that. It was a nice act of kindness. But then the following day, the monk saw in the newspaper that the burglar had been caught robbing another house and was soon sentenced to jail for about 10 years. So I know sometimes, we do watch I don't watch like the newscast, but we do see on the ABC News, what's it called? Scan or whatever. And if you see the ABC News scan, I just mentioned it to, I think, Venerable Metaji this afternoon, that there was a monk. I think I mentioned it to you, yeah, just earlier. There's a monk there on the ABC News. It's not me, it's no one from Bodhinyana. It used to be a Bodhinyana, it was Ajahn Sujato. because he did an official signing ceremony for the Uluru Statement or whatever on behalf of the Australia Sangha Association. He's over in Sydney somewhere. So I was really quite surprised to see a monk in there who you know. But this was the case that he wasn't a thief, Ajahn Sujato. But this burglar was, and his photo was in the newspaper, the burglar, and the monk realised he'd been caught and sent to jail. So forgot about it. 10 years is a long time. But then 10 years later, the head monk, still the head monk, was woken up in the middle of the night. There was somebody in the reception area. He went to investigate, and who do you think he saw? The old burglar, 10 years older, but with a knife next to the donation box. That's the thing, if you give money to somebody once, they'll always come back and ask again. They don't really learn, do they? Or do they? So anyway, the burglar with the knife pointed at the head monk, and the head monk, oh, it's you again. Okay, here you are, here's the key. He was always really kind. Just like that monk who would always feed the fox, even though he's not really supposed to. And at that, the burglar sort of put the knife down and said, thank you. I'm glad you remember me, because I will always remember you. I was thinking of you every day when I was in prison. Of all the people I've known in the world, including my family, you're the only one who's been kind to me. You gave me food and the money, even though I was threatening you with a knife. You didn't know who I was. You were not just courageous, you were kind and loving. You cared about my health instead of worrying about your own safety. And I realized in those 10 years, when I came the last time, I'd stolen the wrong things. This time, I've come to steal the secret of your kindness and your compassion. Please, make me a monk. I want to be a disciple of yours. So, what would you like if you came here? Would you like to have the money and lots of food? Or would you like to have that peace, that stillness, that understanding, that wisdom, that kindness? What is the most valuable? I love that little story, because it just shows just what is really meaningful in this world in a positive way. So very rarely do we see in newspapers, rarely do we see in the news sites on the internet beautiful stories like that, where someone just goes a little bit further and decides to treat people with respect and dignity and have another way of dealing with things in life. And this is not just isolated stories. Somebody showed me an article about a judge up in the Kimberley region somewhere, a magistrate. There was a kid who was always getting into trouble with the law up there. This was apparently a true story. And the magistrate, I think not a judge, a magistrate, just had seen this kid in his court so many times and said to him, look, legally I'm supposed to put you into juvenile detention again. I've done that so many times. It's not working. But what I will do, if you can actually behave and do something useful, if I don't see you for 6 months, I'll set you free and you behave. After 6 months I'll give you a bicycle, and one of the expensive ones, paid for out of my own money. And the kid was actually, you can go now, you're free, charges are dropped. And the kid was so surprised, someone was actually being kind to him and generous. And even that kid, it struck him so deeply in the heart apparently, something he never expected. And so 6 months later, the magistrate very happily bought him a new bike. Just that little bit of kindness instead of punishment was all that was needed for that kid at that time to change his whole life around. And that's a true story. I haven't got the article now, it's some years ago, but I thought that's the sort of stuff I like to see, which gives people meaning in life and maybe encourages you to treat life in a different way. And when you do have any power over your kids, power in your family, to use it with kindness, with wisdom and generosity. I don't mean generosity getting more donations so that we can get a cow and a cat. No, just the kindness to the whole world. That's really a wonderful thing to do. And that way we can understand the spiritual heart of Buddhism. You never think, why me anymore? It's like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do something good in this world. And if you're privileged enough to be able to be in that situation where you can help somebody, what a beautiful situation that is. Yeah, the abbot lost some money and some food. You can always get money again and food again, but get that inspiration again, that kindness which you gave to a prisoner so never needs to go to jail again. That is really important and beautiful. So this is one of the reasons why the inspirational part of all spirituality is by far the most important, and one of the reasons why we teach here. Those stories can maybe make you a little bit more kind. And so even there was one jurisdiction over, I think in the East, they said that instead of actually fining people, when they speed or they break the law, turn the corner and they shouldn't turn the corner, they make a road offence. They said, no, instead of doing that, we're going to instead reward people, give positive reinforcement. So they told the police that if they see anybody driving down the roads of that city and they actually keep the rules and are kind, then they will give them a reward, actually a monetary reward. And so the police were following this one car, and it was really behaving well, always being kind, never breaking the speed limit, and giving way to other people so they can get in the correct lane, and always stopping in time for pedestrians to cross the road and stuff like that. And so this policeman had been following this car for a while, and decided that this is really a worthy recipient of this gift. And so stopped the car, and of course the people in the car being stopped by the police, you think, what have I done wrong? And the driver of the car said, no, I haven't done anything wrong, officer. He said, no, I know you haven't done anything wrong. I've been following you, observing you. You've been an excellent driver, courteous, keeping all the rules and everything else. So because of the new jurisdiction, we don't punish anymore. We want to reward you. So he said, I'm going to give you this $200, for your good driving. And the guy behind the wheel said, wow, that's amazing, thank you so much. But I need to keep the record because you can sign over here that you received it. And can you please let us know what you're going to actually do with that money now you've got it? He said, oh, now I've got it, I'm going to apply for a license. I couldn't afford one before. Oh, sorry, I couldn't resist that one for the end. So anyway, that's the talk this evening. I hope it was interesting for you. You're not dealing with the problems of the world. Actually, it was dealing with the problems of the world, but in a positive way. Instead of thinking, oh, do this solution, do that solution. Let's have the solution of kindness and peace and seeing things in a different way. Melting the heart rather than strengthening the fist. Okay, so any questions or comments or complaints about this evening's talk? Yeah?
I was just wondering, what do you think about people who are exclusive and ignore certain people? What are your views?
Exclusive, it depends who they are. If it was a Mr. Trump and ignored other people, ignored everybody, that'd be a good thing. Yeah. No, I'm sure you don't mean that. Sometimes exclusive ignore other people. They don't want to have contact with others. That's their choice. But a lot of times if you don't have contact with others, it's a dangerous situation to be in. I remember, because I've been in West Australia for about 38, 39 years now, that one of the first times I went into a prison, to teach meditation was in Fremantle jail. It was still operating then. And some of the prisoners, all male jail, and I remember talking with them and trying to find out how it felt. One of the things which they said in there was they never saw children. And some of these had sentences of 20, 30, 40 years. And they said, there's those little things they miss. They're seeing little kids being naughty and running around and screaming. And also they never saw distances, because there was walls, high walls all over the place. And the only way they could see a distance, they had to stretch their neck up to see the sky. They couldn't see sunsets, because by the time that sun had gone below the wall, it wasn't really setting yet. And they said little things which you may not appreciate was actually torture for them. And sometimes the first time, when they got close to the end of the sentence, they can have some day release or something, and they went outside of that big grey buildings. They said it blew their minds to see distances, to see kids, to see real life out there. It was something which I take for granted, but for them it was really difficult. And that's what happens when you exclude others from the life. You think you're just protecting yourself, but actually you're missing out on so much of life. And people often do that out of fear. It's hard even to control yourself. You can't control others. And so they think there's much more safety just being by myself. Yes, there's more safety there, you may say, but then you miss out on so much of life. I say this to young women sometimes. Yes, when you have a broken heart, so please don't put your heart in a concrete bunker. It does mean you won't get hurt again, but you're not alive. You're just dead. So I don't know if that's what you mean by excluding others, but sometimes people do it to such a huge amount. I think I'll share this story before I answer the question, because this is an interesting story. It's also a personal story. That I remember having a dream when I was young, and the dream was that as a young boy, maybe about 6 or 7 years of age, this is just a dream, that I was attacked by other thugs, and I was knifed many times. This was a dream. And then my mother came out to rescue me, but not really in time. And for me it was hurting so much that I went deep inside. It's a weird dream, but I'm a weird monk. And then I remember in this dream of being deep in, I think they call it catatonia, for years. A weird dream, and then eventually coming out of that catatonia, I was so afraid to come out. Life was so scary that I excluded everybody by going deep inside where I couldn't feel anything. And then being in some sort of institution, and then the voice of a nurse, sweet, singing some sort of song or something, and that just gave me the feeling of safety and brought me out of that very lonely but very safe state where I wouldn't communicate with others. And that was my dream of excluding other people just because I was really badly hurt. Now that never happened, not in this life anyway, but I just recall that, and just how many times people go inside because of fear. They've been hurt once, traumatized, they just need to go deep inside. And how to get people out of that state is just kindness, massive kindness. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you, because I don't think I shared that with the monks, but I don't think I've shared that with anybody here before. Anyway, you had a question. So
I was just wondering, Ajahn, how do you motivate a year 12 student during times of exam, which is coming towards the end? How do you motivate your own son to do better?
Okay, now, first of all, how do you motivate your own son? You're his dad, you can't motivate them. But what you can do is, has he got a girlfriend?
Ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend. See if you can actually get him another one. Because this was this other gentleman, his son, he was at university, but the grades were going down, I mean really badly down. Mum and Dad would tell their son, you know, you have to finish your university, you're a smart guy, you shouldn't have any trouble finishing the university. Wouldn't listen to the Mum and Dad. So this man, really smart, he stayed up late. When his son came back with his girlfriend, you know, late at night, they'd been to some party or some nightclub or something, he invited both of them into the house. His son was very worried and also embarrassed that his father was up so late. And his father never talked to his son, just talked to his son's girlfriend and said, I've just been noticing you've been going out for a while now. I'm not sure how your relationship is, but you know, maybe one day you might want to commit to one another. But I just needed to tell you that, you know, his grades at university are really getting so bad that he's getting close to being kicked out, and I'm sure you don't want to commit to a guy who hasn't finished university. And she said, I didn't know that. He never told me that. But anyway, I just thought I'd let you know. Good night, have a wonderful evening. That was the end of that, because she was on his case every day. They'd be going out to some nightclub or party or dance or something. Have you finished your assignment yet? You know, he could refuse all those words from his father and his mother, but not from his girlfriend. His girlfriend had power over him. So please, get a nice girlfriend for your son. And then you make sure you get, you know, close to the girlfriend. She's a nice, good girl. And then, even if you want to pay her, that might work too. And then the girlfriend will have full power, but via you. And please don't let your son hear this talk. Otherwise, you'll start to get suspicious.
I'm just going to hire a girlfriend now.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Anything from internet? No internet questions tonight. Oh, they're coming. Okay. Here we go. But it's true. After a while, your children, they learn just how to withstand the advice and commands of their parents. For the girlfriends or the boyfriends, they've got full power. From Queensland, Ajahn, when I get into a deep meditation, I feel a force that feels as though it's pushing my head to one side. I try to accept and allow it and even move with it, but it's unsettling. Please help. If it's a deep meditation, you should let your body go as quick as possible. In other words, even when I was doing this short meditation, you watch your body, you relax the whole body, and then you go inside so you can't even feel your body. So you don't know what the body is up to, so it's not pushing to the left or to the right or anything. The body's vanished for you. So if it really is a deep meditation, you should be able to even not feel your head. Everything is nice and relaxed. Now from Borneo, dear Ajahn, you said about how fear is not good for us, but even when we know it, yet we still fear because it just appears automatically. What effort can we do to train ourselves in this? Don't have any effort with fear. Any of these negative emotions, just let them be. That's the way they disappear, because even the fear feeds on negativity, feeds on fear. So you're afraid of fear, then the fear gets worse. So just leave fear alone. Don't indulge in it, and after a while you'll see almost everything you were afraid of never happens. People say, oh, you feed the fox is going to bite your fingers off. No, it doesn't. Sometimes the snakes. Be careful of the snakes in Bodhinyana monastery, because if they bite you, you'll die. Even Ajahn Chah used to say, don't worry about, they never have in Bodhinyana monastery. Even Ajahn Chah would say, you can go out into the jungles, you don't need to be afraid of tigers, because tigers have never sort of killed any monks. You know what I thought? How do you know? Prove it. The tiger wouldn't confess, and the monk wouldn't be able to give a report because he's been killed. But no, a lot of the fear. One good way of overcoming the fear is again with humour. Years and years and years ago, I remember just coming in here, a lot of years ago, and I was thinking as I saw all the people here waiting to come the Friday night to listen to me, what if I just mess up and say the wrong thing, or people get really bored and all walk out? And then, just for a moment, I had fear. The fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough. But then I sort of thought, no, I'm just going to come in here and have fun. Tell a few jokes, just like I was sitting in a coffee table with you, around a coffee table, just tell silly stories, jokes, whatever. Something useful might come out. Wonderful. But I'm going to have fun. Because I realised you can't have fun and fear at the same time. So that was my way of dealing with it. And from Birmingham, UK, why are the Four Noble Truths noble? What is noble about suffering? That's a good question. No, it is, they call it noble, it's just aryan, it's just like high. There are things which actually lead to people becoming noble. It's not that suffering is noble, but when you understand these things, you become like a higher spiritual being. In other words, when things go wrong, welcome to this world. If you get sick, welcome to this world. If you get COVID, like even monks, JR had COVID. So, just because you're a monk, it doesn't mean you're not going to get COVID. This is just our world. And when we accept our world, we know exactly how much our world can give and how much it can't. Then we become high spiritual beings. One of the things of suffering, this is one of those definitions. Somebody asked me and put me on a spot very quickly, what is suffering? And suffering is asking from this world something it can never give you. That's called suffering. And that is noble to understand that. My goodness, heaps of questions, but this is the last couple here. From Melbourne, sometimes in deep meditation I get hot in a spot in my body, and sometimes sweat will cover my face and some parts of my body. Is there a reason for that? It could have many reasons, but usually if you have a hot spot in your body, that's healing happening. And if that's happening, well done. So often it might be a cancer, it could be all sorts of stuff. It could be after a car accident and the body is healing. You get very peaceful and then it frees the body's energy to go where it needs to. So if you're very peaceful and you have a hot spot in your body, that's brilliant. Sweating again, it may be because you haven't turned down the aircon. Okay, Ajahn. Okay, here we go, quick one. Is there any explanation why the Sangha, monks and nuns, not restricted from eating animal food according to Buddhism? The Buddha was asked that question by Devadatta, can you please make sure that all monks and nuns are vegetarian? Have that was happening, I wouldn't have been able to eat anything in northeast Thailand. It made it more open for monks and nuns to have at least something to eat, to be able to eat what the locals ate. Lastly, Flowers Metta. Ajahn, I meditate around 30 minutes every day. Always in the last minutes of the 30 minutes the breath is so light and clear, but it lasts only 3 to 5 breaths of stillness every time. How could I progress? Please answer my question, Ajahn. It's always been like that for the past 3 years. No, this is actually when these things happen. It is because you're trying to have progress. This is the basic thing in meditation. Ajahn Chah, my teacher, he hammered this into us. When you meditate to let go, not to get things. To abandon things. To be, as I said over to the monks, to be a loser, not a winner. So are you a loser? How much have you lost? How much of the past and the future? How much of your anger and disappointments and fears and anxiety have you lost? Imagine if you lost all of those things, then you'll be a big loser, and very peaceful and very happy and very noble. So that's what we mean, not to get things. Getting things, that idea of accumulating, grasping things, that's not Buddhist. We lose things. And then you'll find that it's very easy to meditate. And not just in the last minutes of the 30 minutes, the breath is so light and clear. See if you can meditate for 35, 40 minutes. If the breath is light and clear, enjoy it. Time has not got that much meaning. Don't be a prisoner of time. It's always been like that for the past 3 years. Things aren't always like that. Things never stay the same. They usually get worse. Or better, one of the two. Okay. So thank you again all for listening. Now we do the homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Is that okay? Yeah. Oh. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Hey, I missed out something. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Remember, after 3 sadhus, you always have 3 he's. He. Ho, ho, ho.